Comments about Prince Andrew and the spitting image puppet seem to have produced quite a lot of sudden responses. Mice says, I've heard of princesses kissing frogs in fairy tales before, but this is the first time I've heard the one about the sweaty prince who kisses minors. Bob Somiadi says, Andrew needs to testify under oath and be cross examined. That's the only way to separate facts from baseless rumours. He simply refused to do it. Consequently, speculation of his involvement just grows and grows. Well, uh, it's very interesting because it raises the whole issue of the puppet, raises the issue of puppets itself and fear of puppets. There's actually a word for that. Did you know? It's a puppaphobia, as opposed to fear of dolls, which is pediophobia. Probably the less said about that, the better. Fear of children is pedophobia. Uh, both both pediophobia and pedophobia come from the same etymology. Pedia for children and phobia, fear. Um, Coulrophobia would be fear of clowns. But all these fears are really the fear, the worry about the uncanny valley, the sense that something which seems familiar is strangely jarring, which is why I think so often when we see a 3D animated film, something like Frozen, we think, oh, just slightly, we're slightly taken aback, which is why I much prefer 2D traditional Disney animation, because it's clear that it's a pencil drawing and not something that tries very hard, like the Polar Express, to be real and somehow fails, somehow is not quite right. It lives in that uncanny valley. Uh, I mean, I think there is a general anxiety. It may be heavily suppressed when you come across a doll, a puppet, a clown. And it's not simply a fear of Chucky, that Chucky from Child's Play might be hiding behind the corner. It is an anxiety about the uncanny, what Freud calls the unheimlich. Freud actually wrote a very interesting paper, very interesting essay about the unheimlich, the uncanny, and he was basing it on E.T.A. Hoffman's brilliant story of the Sandman. E.T.A. Hoffman, if you haven't come across him, is the person behind the Nutcracker. And the Nutcracker itself, the original story, is so much more disturbing than the story on which the ballet is based. The ballet is based on a sort of sanitized French reworking of the E.T.A. Hoffman uh, bizarre story. But Freud is quite right. And actually, when you're looking at the uncanny valley, when you're looking at the unheimlich, the um, uncanny, the strange, the bizarre, the television program which comes most to my mind is Doctor Who, which takes things which seem quite normal and puts them in a slightly unusual situation, like pepper pots suddenly become these monstrous alien invaders called Daleks. Um, but when Freud is looking at this thing, he's not just looking at psychoanalysis and um, uh, the brain. He's also looking at the whole field of aesthetics. Because when we look at aesthetics, um, the study of art, we often unnecessarily emphasize the beautiful. We tend not to look, or we tend not to focus on the ugly, the fearful, the anxious making. And the anxious making is as important as the beautiful. The light is all the more attractive because of the darkness that surrounds it. And it's the deep effect of literature and art on particularly children. It's why children's literature is so important. It's why small children should benefit so much from having books read to them and from reading books and looking at pictures, um, because they have an opportunity to rework the familiar and the known in in a different framework, to see things differently. But of course, when this gets really jarring, this becomes the uncanny, and this becomes the fearful. That sense of uncertainty, that sense of unease, when the friendly proves to be scary, when the prince, of course, actually turns out to be a predatory frog. And how do you deal with this? You deal with this by reading more, by looking at more pictures, by being exposed more to the beautiful and the ugly, by confronting reality as transmitted through art, through puppetry, through dolls. Playing with dolls is a way of contextualizing the uncertainty of life, and giving children an opportunity to construct stories that give meaning and give focus and form and resolution, rather than living in this world of utter uncertainty. Those people who are fearful of dolls, fearful of puppets, fearful of clowns, I understand that the route is literally exposure therapy, to throw more puppets, clowns, and dolls at them, to use cognitive behavioral techniques, family therapy, even hypnosis, and if all this fails, to throw Valium and Prozac at them. But it's this fear of the unknown, this fear of the uncanny, lies at the heart of storytelling, and our desire to make sense of what we don't quite get. That seeing something from a slightly different angle makes it seem uncertain. Seeing the horizon at a different angle, which is a great cinematic technique, makes us feel uncertain and takes us into the uncanny valley. And we have to grapple with uncertainty in order to find our balance, in order to get resolution, in order to feel comfortable. And so when I think famous people, celebrities, are caught up in dodgy stories, this again is also a form of the uncanny valley. What we expect to trust, we suddenly find we can't trust. We just need to deal with this. We need to recognize that there is a way through uncertainty. Uncertainty is part of our life, and we can find ways to create a path. All we are doing is creating a path for ourselves. We're not actually changing that uncertainty. We're simply changing our view of it. I think that's an extraordinary insight. It's from Freud, and it's part of the uncanny. I think it forms a bedrock to Doctor Who. I'm afraid it's central to the satirical images of the caricatures in Spitting Image, and I think in some ways it's about our frustration, our fascination with celebrity and with things like the royal family, and why it's so disturbing when these people fail to live up to our expectations, the expectations that we've put on them. They are, after all, as Matt Hancock said, only human, but we've given them a superhuman status. They've become something like a fairy tale creation, and we expect them to have a fairy tale ending. That is our perception, and we simply need to find a path through the revelations that these people are sadly just human.